The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast are those of the speakers or authors and do not necessarily reflect or represent the views and opinions held by the producers of this broadcast. The material herein is for entertainment purposes only.
Welcome, everybody, to Scariest Paranormal Radio. This is Kalila Smith, and we have a gentleman here tonight, Calvin, who is going to talk to us about his experience many years ago. He is from Pascagoula, Mississippi, my family's old stomping ground, and he has had an actual experience with alien abduction. So welcome, Calvin Parker. Welcome to Scariest Paranormal. It's a pleasure to have you here, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here. I was just down in your part of the country not too long ago with the doing a filming for the History Channel.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, in Houma, Louisiana, which I used to
Okay.
live in Golden Meadow, Louisiana, which I think is pretty close to where you used to live there.
Yeah, I don't know where, I'm not real sure where Golden Meadow is. I actually live in La Place, so I'm about maybe 45 minutes from Homa. I'm not
Yeah,
far from yeah, I'm not far from Homa at all. Homa's not real far from me, but I know Golden Meadow's down there somewhere. I know it's like going down there towards Grand Isle.
yeah, it is. Highway 1, it'll take you right through. But the reason I was down there, also, we talking about different things that happen all over the world. Colonel Jesse Marcel, that was in the Roswell incident, was actually lived in Houma, Louisiana. Well, when I live in Golden Meadow, I got to meet him and we became friends. And they was wanting to know a little bit about what we had seen and talked about and all. And I was curious to know what Jesse was. Of course, he's dead now, but we just went back through where he used to live and talked a little bit about him.
Wow, that's fascinating. That is fascinating. Well, so tell me, let everybody know, because we're going to be airing this show sometimes in a couple of months. We're recording it right now. So tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and let's start there so people kind of get an idea of who you are. And this happened. When did this happen? This
In
encounter happened to you?
1973, October 11th of
73.
1973. And this was the
Wow.
strangest thing. I was working in the oil field originally before I went to Pascagoula to go to work in a shipyard. So, but it was a 16, back then it was 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. Well, I was engaged to get married in November. This happened in October, and I was engaged to get married in November, and I wanted somewhat of a normal life. I mean, I was making plenty of money in the oil field, but I wanted normal in my life. All I've ever wanted to do was get married, buy a house, have children, have grandchildren, retire and fish. But all that stuff kind of got turned around in a different direction. So I called a friend of mine, which name was Charlie Hickson. He was working in Pascagoula in one of these little small shipyards. And I asked him if I could get a job and come down and go to work. And that would give me a shot at, having some time off and possibly then moving from my hometown, which was Laurel, Mississippi, to Pascagoula and settling down here. And he said, sure. So to make a long story short, I moved to Pascagoula on October the 10th. October the 11th, I had a physical. I had my physical, I got hired, I got fired, and had a physical all in the same day. But this is where
Wow.
the abduction happened. So, it's just a lot that's been going on. I'm trying to turn my phone off here, but you know, it's been a long road. It was 46 years that I went without talking about this thing, and then all of a sudden, out kind of a freaky thing there, I started talking about it. Matter of fact, I never talked to my wife, my friends, my family, to nobody about what had happened. The whole world knew because the next day, October the 12th, that was a big headliner all over the world. It wasn't just here in the United States or just here local, but this went out all over the world. And I kind of kept it under my hat until July of last year when the book came out. And I wasn't planning on writing a book, but a neighbor of ours had passed away that lived next door, and we went to the wake. Well, I've never signed my name because I didn't want people to know who I was or where I was from, because I figured they'd think I was crazy and I didn't want to lose another job or nothing. So we went to the wake. My wife and I went to the wake. I accidentally put my real name down on the log where you log in at the wake for some reason. And people started recognizing the name. I mean, 46 years later. So
Wow.
people recognized my name from that log. And they come up and they started talking about this. And I didn't want to disrespect this man's family, take the attention away from his grieving wife and his grieving daughter. So I
Sure.
told my wife, let's just get out of here. Let's get in the truck and go and forget all about this. On the way home, she said, well, you never even talked to me about it. Maybe you ought to write a book. I said, look, I don't have an education, and I don't. Barely did scrape by in school and got out and always worked, but I never had a good education. I said, I don't have the education to write a book. And I'm not going to, because if I write one, I want it in my words. Well, nothing else was mentioned. I just told her anything I could to get her to hush up. But by chance, yeah, very next day, I was down at the boat landing, loading my boat on the trailer, and the phone rang. And it was a guy called Philip Mantle. And he has a publishing company in the UK. And he asked me, he said, could I talk to you about Charlie Hickson's book, which was a guy that was with me during this time? I said, well, you can talk to me, but I've never read the book, never cared to read it, not going to read it. He said, why? I said, every time I talk to the press, every time the word gets out, they try to change what I say. And that was the truth. I went through this for 45 years then. And I just didn't like nobody changing my words. He said, look, if you write a book, it'll be in black and white. It'll be your legacy. They can't change that, what you say in this book. And I got to thinking about it. And I said, well, let me think about it. So I did. I thought about it. And, of course, my wife over here barking at me, want me to write a book. And then this publisher got a hold. He wanted me to write a book. I said, call me back. He said, I'll call you back in a week. Well, what I did on the phone where he hung up, I just put no answer on my phone. Showed up by his number. So about a week, he was good to his word. He called back. I accidentally answered the phone without looking, and it was him. I didn't want to be rude and hang up. So I talked to him, and he talked me into this thing. Well, I agreed to write the book. I come home, told my wife, look, we're going to try it. But my agreement with Philip, the publisher, is you're not to edit nothing. If I misspell a word, it stays misspelled. If I don't punctuate something, you don't put a period or question or explanation. You don't mess with it. My words is what it is. You don't correct any of my words in this book. So he agreed to do that. And I said, well, let's see how it turns out. So it didn't take me. This is something I lived for 45 years. He said, I know it's going to take you two or 3 years to write a book. I said, bull. He said, I'll write this book in 2 weeks. He
Wow.
said, no. So I come home. I told my wife, I said, I'm going to my office, closing the door, leaving my phone up front. I don't want to see nobody. I don't want to talk to nobody, not you, not nobody else. Once a day, bring me something to eat and a drink into the room. And when I come out, we'll have our book. And sure enough, 2 weeks' time, I had an 847-page book laying there and a lot
Wow.
more information. And it was just unbelievable. I figured I would sell 10 books and I'd buy them all myself, and I'd give them to my family and friends, and I wouldn't have to sit there and tell them the story. But first 3 days was on the bestsellers market, and it's pretty much been that way ever since.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's amazing. Well, I mean, what happened to you is not what happens to, I mean, that just doesn't happen every day. I mean,
No,
that is just, this is an unusual situation. And like I said, I mean, I've been working with the paranormal for quite a while, over 25 years professionally, and I've never known anyone who had an actual experience. I've read a lot about it, but I've never really known anybody, met anybody in person that had actually experienced anything. So I find it fascinating.
this is really a unique case. I don't know of another one like it anywhere. Different people see different things, and of course, it's more abduction cases, but I don't know anyone that's just like this. And I found that out since the book came out.
So now, what happened to you and your buddy? I mean, were y'all were together? You were fishing when this happened? Is that correct?
We had worked all day at the shipyard and got off work. And Charles Hickson is his name. He asked me, he said, "You want to go fishing before we go home?" Well, I was renting an apartment, a room from him until I found me a place to rent or buy. And I said, "Sure." So I said, "There's just one problem." I said, "I didn't bring no fishing equipment with me." He said, "Oh, I got plenty. We'll go by my house and get it." Now, for a man from the South to offer you his fishing equipment, he'd rather give you his firstborn or his wife other than his fishing equipment, loan it to you.
That's true.
So, I felt that was a pretty big honor. So we went by his house and picked up the fishing equipment. He said, "I know a place on the Pascagoula River that the fishing's usually pretty good. It's an old grain elevator there, and they unload these ships. And when that feed falls off, the fish come up and eat the feed." I said, "You know this place better than I do. Let's go." Well, we got there to the grain elevator. The bugs were so bad, we just couldn't stand them. Them little no-sims and everything else. He said, I know another place. Let's try it before we go home." So we ended up at a old abandoned shipyard called the Shaw Peter Shipyard, right off Highway 90 in Pascagoula. We and I noticed walking down to where we was going, there was a no trespassing sign. I said, "Charlie, it's a no trespassing sign here. It's okay." He said, "Sure, I fish here all the time," which I found out later that wasn't really true. So we was walking to the water, and I was thinking to myself, looked like they'd cleaned this place up a little bit. We got to the pier about 15 minutes from the car to get to the pier, pulled up an old log, and we was sitting on the pier. And I remember looking across the river. We was sitting on the east bank, and I was looking across on the east bank at an old Coast Guard cutter or Noah ship one, but it was a big ship. And I was sitting there thinking in my mind, now how does steel float? And I noticed coming from behind me was a hazy blue light. It was the kind of light like the patrol cars use down here, the police cars and all. And it was reflecting off the water coming from behind me. So I automatically thought we was going to jail for trespassing. And I stood up and turned around and looked. And as we turned around, there was a bright light that hit both of us. I mean, it was blinding bright. It's just hard to believe how bright it was. And it was focused on us. It temporarily, kind of temporary blinded me for a minute. And I know it had to, Charlie. And time this kind of started wearing off, I noticed there was three bulky looking creatures coming toward us, but it was too late to run. I mean, nowhere to run to. So we just kind of stood there for a second, and they was there. Well, two of them got a hold of Charlie. One of them got a hold of me. I immediately felt some kind of injection into my arm when this thing got me, and it paralyzed me, or maybe where I didn't care. I call it my go to hell shot, where you just don't really care. And later on at the doctor's office, they figured out that it really was an injection, two of them.
Oh my goodness.
So this thing kind of had me weary a little bit. Now I couldn't move my body, but I could roll my head a little bit and I could move my eyes, and I still had a sense of sight and smell. This one thing that had a hold of me floated up toward a door, and we got in the door, and I remember looking in this crowd for lights, for a big spotlight, but it seemed like the lights was coming out of the walls. And he just kind of paused there a second, and then he went in, and it did. It looked just like the lights was just into the paint on the walls. We took a left and went down the hall for a little bit, and this thing turned right. And I noticed there was a glass-looking table in the middle of this room, and it was kind of sitting on a little bit of an angle. Now, still not able to move, but I could still see. I could still roll my head, my eyes. He took and laid me on this table on my back, and it was set at about a 45-degree angle, I guess. And I was looking up at the ceiling, and something about the size of a deck of cards came out of the ceiling, and it started revolving around my head, and it would go click, 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 click. Then it shot back up into the ceiling. Well, this is when this old big ugly thing just backed up in a corner. And I think he was mechanical because he just shut down. I mean, he backed up over there and just shut down like you turned the electricity off. And I was still in on my back, and I sensed the presence at this time in the room, but I still couldn't see nothing. So I rolled my head over, and I seen what looked typically like a little redneck female woman here. Now, she was probably disguised or something, but she had eyes, nose, ears, mouth. She had everything normal looking uh, that she could have. Now, somebody said, well, how do you know it was a woman? Well, I never did really know it was a woman, but I sensed it was because I've lived down here on New Orleans and the coast long enough to know you can't go by sight anyhow if you think it's a woman. Usually, the prettiest women are men dressed up like women. So,
That's true. That's true.
and you can sense it. So, but I just sensed that this was a woman. Well, she come up, and the only difference I could see in her, on her hand, her two middle fingers was a little bit longer than normal. And she touched my chin and kind of rubbed it. I didn't feel any warmth whatsoever from her skin or from her hands. And she got her left hand and she put on my chin and pushed my mouth open, and took that right hand and ran them two fingers down my throat. And she was trying to get in behind that little thing that hangs down.
Ah.
I don't know what to call it. I just call it my hang me down. And she was trying to reach in behind that. And I was
Oh my
choking, then
goodness.
started throwing up blood. I couldn't breathe. Well, she pulled her hand out. Now, telepathically, her mouth never moved. She never opened her mouth to say this. But she said, we're not going to harm you. And I was thinking, and it's too late for not going to harm because I was already had my throat scratched up, bleeding, blood coming out of my nose, my mouth, and it was just a painful experience. But she backed up, and I guess telepathically told me that. And then all of a
Wow.
sudden, she made a moan out of her throat, kind of like an alligator. They're mating in the spring, it just goes all over. And this thing that was standing in the corner, no big ugly one, like I kind of described him, he jumped up like a jack in a box. He come over, he grabbed me by the arm again. I felt another injection. Well, she backed up out of the way. That was the last I seen of her this time. And he carried me back out the door, put me down at the river. My arms outstretched in the river, and about the same spot that I was in. And he left. Well, about that time, I heard Charlie, Calvin, you okay? Of course, I was. I turned around and I started looking. And the lights went out. This thing picked up off the ground a little bit, and it just shot up and disappeared into the sky. Well, it's a little late to panic in, so we sat on the back down on the pier for just a minute, and I was still trying to get over the shock of my throat and all being scratched up. And Charlie said, "Well, we need to tell somebody." I said, "We don't need to tell nobody. I'm not telling nobody about this because they think me crazy. I won't be able to go to work nowhere or anything else." I said, "So no, I didn't see nothing, Charlie." He said, "Well, let's go." We walked back up, when I went to get into the car, I had a brand new 1973 Rambler Hornet. All the windows on the passenger side were shattered in place. And when I
Oh my
reached to the
gosh.
car, it didn't have no power locks on them cars. You had to reach over and pull that little thing up. So when I reached over and unlocked it, that window on that side, when he opened the door, just fell out. Like I never did get my car cranked. My keys was sticking to the car. It was magnetic. So finally got it to crank, busted off, and we left. And we was headed what I thought was to his house. And he seen a store there. Now, everybody's got to remember this was 1973. There weren't no cell phones, wasn't no social media. And he
Right.
said, pull over. I need to use this phone. So, that was understandable, him wanting to call his wife. I didn't know who was going to call her. I wouldn't have let him. So we pulled over. None of us have any change to put in the phone. And I used to remember when I'd clean the car out, I'd look under the seats or in between the seat cushions, and people would lose change out of their pockets. So we did. We found enough for him to use the phone. He called Keesler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. They said, "We don't take calls like this. We don't have a Project Blue Book or nothing going on anymore. Call your local authorities." So he came back to the car, dug under the seat. He called the Jackson County Sheriff Department. And of course, they thought we was drinking and all, or on something. They said, "Fellas, y'all just sit right there, don't move. We'll be there in just a minute." And they was good as their word. They showed up. Of course, I was driving, so I'm the one that got all the flack. They walked up to my door and they looked in, just kind of peeked around in the car, what they could see. Asked me if I'd step out and hand them my driver's license. I did. They said, "Now, stand on one leg, stand on your right leg, lean your head back, close your eyes, touch your nose, jump up and down. While jumping up and down, touch your nose and count from 100 backwards." So, man, I can't do that if I was sober, which I hadn't been drinking. I just didn't feel like being intimidated because we're the one that called them. I said, "Well, you seem fine. Follow us to the SO, the sheriff department, and we want to talk about this a little more about what happened to y'all." I said, "Nothing happened to me." I said, "I guess that guy's crazy over there. I don't know what he told you, but nothing happened to me." So we followed them to the police department. And they took me into one room, took him into another room, and they was doing an interrogation on me. Now, the whole time that they was doing this, Of course, I was denying anything happened because I didn't want nobody to know. I didn't want to talk about it. Charlie back there spilling his guts. So then all of a sudden, they put us in a room together, but they had a hidden tape recorder into this room. And that's what they call the hidden recorder. Well, where I messed up and let my story out of what happened was when me and him was in there talking on what they call the secret tape, the hidden tape. And gosh, from that minute on, it went public. I mean, all over.
Stay tuned for more Scariest Paranormal Radio.
Submitted for your approval. New Orleans. Seductive, magical, mysterious, and haunted. There is no place on this earth with as much ghost and vampire activity as New Orleans. Imagine, if you will, a tour that takes you to sites in the French Quarter of actual documented hauntings. The Haunted History Tour is just that tour. Every day, every night, all year round. This tour has been featured on ABC, CBS, NBC, and CNN, and it's available to you. Are there ghosts and vampires in the French Quarter? Find out by taking the tour that everyone is talking about, the Haunted History Tour. For more information, call Haunted History Tours at 861-2727. That's 861-2727. This is not a Halloween spookhouse. This is real.
You're listening to Scariest Paranormal Radio.
So the big sheriff showed up. He said, y'all just go home. And I'll talk to y'all tomorrow. Well, we did. We got in the car, made our way home. Went in, laid down. And, well, when I got there, I remember going into the bathroom, taking all my clothes off, my shoes, everything off, putting in a paper bag. They didn't have them plastic bags in. But I rolled everything up in a paper bag. I got in the shower, and there was a half a gallon of bleach on the shower. And I poured that over my head, thinking it'd kill any kind of bacteria or anything that we might have. Because I didn't know what we might be carrying home to our family. And I washed it off. Got out of the shower, went and threw the little bag, put on some clean clothes, went and throw the little bag in the dumpster. So the next morning, of course, I had a lot of trouble sleeping that night. I didn't sleep. Got up and went in there, and Charlie was already awake talking to his wife. I didn't know if he told her anything or not. Let's go to work. He said, okay. So we got in the car, my little car again. We drove to work. Now, this is in October, and a little bit chilly with that window knocked out. But we got to work, and I noticed there was a lot of cars parked around there. Now, this is just my second day at work, so I didn't know how many cars were supposed to be there. We brassed in. They give you a piece of brass with a number on it, and you hand it to them when you go in, and you pick it up when you come out. So we got brassed in. Calling mine and Charlie's name to come to the office over the intercom. They said, look, I was thinking then, something going on. We got into the office and they said, look, we can't conduct any kind of business. The phone's ringing off the hook. Everybody's wanting to know what happened to y'all. So, man, nothing happened to us. They said, well, y'all was at the sheriff department and told him y'all had been abducted or something like that. So that was Charlie. That wasn't me. He said, y'all got to give a press release so we can conduct our business here. We have the shipyard attorney coming here. Y'all give him a press release and he'll talk to him and he'll get him out of our office and all. So I still wouldn't talk to him about it. Charlie talked to the guy. He turned over a press release. By that time, the sheriff of Jackson County, which was Fred Diamond, showed up. He said, look, we're concerned about y'all being contaminated and maybe something wrong. So I need to take y'all to the Jackson River Hospital in Pascagoula. I said, well, I agreed with him there, because I had watched that Apollo mission where they landed. the astronauts landed, and they quarantined them for 7 or 14 days. One wouldn't even let their families talk to them. So I felt like this was a reasonable request.
Yeah, yeah. You never know. I mean, you don't know what you're exposed to.
No, you don't. They was over there, and they did a physical. They checked our arms. They did blood work. They did all that. And Dr. Bosco said, y'all free to go right now. I don't think it's going to be any problems of contaminating nobody. He said, but y'all do need to get checked for radiation. And the sheriff heard that, and he called Keesler Air Force Base. That was the only place on the coast he knew to take us. He drove us over there. They escorted us through the gate and checked us for radiation. It was 6 guys in a hazmat suit. Then we went back, and the Air Force interviewed us, and they was really nice. Usually, everybody I've ever talked to said, they interrogation and all this black man in black stuff, but that wasn't like it was there. They was nice to us. Well, the sheriff was driving us back to the shipyard to get our car. He said, there's one more person that you need to talk to that's here, and he's at the shipyard. He said, have you ever heard of Dr. Hynek, which was over Project Blue Book? I said, yeah, I've heard of him. No, at that time I hadn't heard of him, but I have now. He was real popular. So he said, y'all need to talk to him. Well, we went in and we met the guy that was over Project Blue Book, but he wasn't with Project Blue Book. Him and Dr. Harder. And I he made me feel so comfortable that I did. I sat down and told Hynek everything that went on. And he went out to the side, checked it. The next day we went back, and I told him I had to get home to my family. Of course, I had made up my mind. That was it. I was going home, and but I wasn't going to go home and talk to my family about it. Not my fiance, the girl I was engaged to get married the next month, nor any of my family, nor any of my friends. As far as I was concerned, I had my 15 minutes of fame, and it was over. So that's what I did. I went home, bundled this stuff up for years. I traveled around. I went back to work in the oil field, and I traveled, and that's how I ended up in Golden Medal. Uh, just all over Louisiana. And that's where I ended up meeting Colonel Marcel and all that was involved in this Roswell thing. And 6 years later, I finally broke the silence, wrote a book on it, not by my choice because I didn't want the publicity, but I got to thinking, things are a little more open now than what they used to be in the 70s. People
Oh yeah,
don't take
absolutely.
right. People don't take you crazy now. You turn on the TV and go to the History Channel, and you got Ancient Alien, you got Project Blue Book, you got all these shows about this, and people take them serious. Where back then they didn't. So that's why I'm sitting
Wow.
here today.
That is amazing. That's an amazing story. Now, so in all of those years, you never had any of no visitations, no seeing anything in your room, anything like that. No other contact from these things.
I did. Uh,
Oh,
in
okay.
1993, I did.
So
And
20 years later.
exactly 20 years later. And when it first happened, I told my wife, we was living in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi. And I said, look, I'm going fishing. Now, back then, at night time, I wouldn't be on that water by myself no more. I said, I'll be back before dark. Don't worry. If something happens, call the Coast Guard. I said, you got to wait probably 24 hours. But I left after that morning at 6, and I got to the island, which was about a 25-minute run to Cat Island. So the tide was wrong. she had made me a lunch, and I was sitting there about 11 o'clock that day and eating a lunch. Well, the next thing I knew, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. So I missed from around 11 o'clock a.m. to 3 o'clock a.m. the next morning. So that's a lot of missing time there. And
Yeah, it
there
is.
was blood all over my shirt. My eyes was cut. My eyeballs was scratched. I mean, I was a mess. Looked like I'd been in an old bar room fight and lost. But I got in a boat and I went home about 3. And of course, she was worried to death. That's where I'd been. I said, well, don't want to talk about it. I'll talk to you about it tomorrow. Go on to bed. So I went in there and took a shower and got cleaned up and didn't think nothing else about it. Got out the next day going to put my boat up and clean it up a little bit. And I noticed there was a friend of mine that came over just for a visit. He said, well, did you catch any fish? You look like hell. Did you catch any fish? I said, well, thank you. And no, I didn't. Well, he opened the cooler and it was full of fish. And I didn't remember putting any of them fish on. And I got to telling him about this missing time. Well, he was actually a reporter with WXXB Channel 25 down here. They'd been trying to interview me for years. And I would never give him an interview, but over this period of time, we became friends. You know, we'd meet for a little bit, shoot the bull. He even went fishing with me a couple of times. Him and his wife would come to the house sometime, you know, and eat dinner. So I said, no, I didn't catch no fish. Well, he opened the cooler. It was full. He said, this cooler's full of fish. I said, no. So I explained to him about this missing time that I had. He said, well, what happened? I said, I don't know. I have no idea. So he said, I know somebody that wrote a book on missing time, and I would like for you to go talk to him. So, well, I don't mind. He said, his name's Bud Hopkins. And I had no idea who in the world Bud Hopkins was. So he said he's in Florida. I said, well, you know, I'm ready for a road trip. That's a nice little short trip from here, you know, 10, 12 hours. So we rode to Florida and we got to where this conference was. I didn't know it was a big UFO conference. And
Oh
he
my
said,
goodness.
yeah. He said, well, he's in there. I said, well, I'm not going in there. I said, I'm staying right here in the car. He probably won't know who I am, don't care who I am, don't want to see me. So Bill went in there and told him that he had a Calvin Parker out there that needed to talk to him. He had some missing time. Well, of course, Bud Hopkins knew of me through the 1973 thing. I figured all that would be over. And he said, y'all go to my motel room. I would like to talk to him. So we went to the motel room and he said, I'll be there in just a little bit. Good to his word. We went on in and sat down. Well, he showed up not too long after that. He had to knock on his own door because he gave us his key. And he come in, introduced himself. Of course, we all introduced ourselves again. And I got to tell him about this missing time. He said, look, let me hypnotize you. I said, but I can't be hypnotized. It's just no way. I don't believe I can. He said, well, let me try. He said, nothing to lose by letting me try. So I agreed. And I said, look, old man, I want to tell you something right now. I don't want my mind played with. I got a ball back in the trunk of that car. If you can get me to do something stupid like they do in them Las Vegas shows, jump up and down and bark like a dog and everything else, or start putting thoughts in my head, I'm bringing this ball back to this guy that's with me. He's going to beat you to death with it. Then he's going to leave and just put the ball back in my hands. Do you understand that? That I do very plainly. And I said, I want these people in here with me because I trust them when you do this. Well, the what came out in all this is another story altogether. And it takes a couple of hours to tell it. So he hypnotized me, and I didn't even realize I had been hypnotized until I was getting ready to do the book. And I had mentioned to Philip, the publisher, I said, they some goofball tried to hypnotize me, but I don't think there's nothing to it. He said, who was it? I said, Bud Hopkins. He said, well, Bud's passed away now. Dr. Jacobs has all his files. Let me try to get them and see what's going on. I said, I'm telling you, I think it's nothing to it. I don't remember. So he sent off. He said, yeah, Dr. Jacobs needs you to give him permission to send me these files. So I did. And come to find out, it was 3 hours of hypnosis on there. Now,
Wow.
when we got ready to listen to the tape, I wouldn't listen to it because he had put a post-hypnotic suggestion in my head that I wouldn't remember this until I was able to handle it.
Stay tuned for more Scariest Paranormal Radio.
Follow me, Kalila Smith, into the mysterious world of spirits. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, is a concise how-to manual for anyone who enjoys a good ghost hunt. Learn the history of spiritualism, learn what a ghost is and what is not. Learn the truth about poltergeist. We'll also delve into the realm of spiritual beings that never were human, the world of demons, real vampires, and we'll look at some real case studies. This is a must-have for everyone interested in ghost hunting, from the novice to the expert. Completely updated in its second edition, this is one of the first guides for ghost hunting based on actual first-hand experiences. Available on Amazon.com. Searching for Spirits, the ultimate guide for ghost hunters, by Kalila Smith.
You're listening to Scariest Paranormal Radio.
So, anyhow, when he transcribed the tapes and all, and there's a lot of good stuff that come out in there. I told my wife, I said, go in. Now, this is the first time, and I didn't even think about it, but I was doing the book. But it was the first time that I had even mentioned anything to her about anything in the book. I said, look, baby, go in there. I don't want to listen to this tape. Listen to the tape, and as my memory comes back and what happens, you tell me if my memory's wrong or right. She went in and she stayed in here in the room about 45 minutes, and she come out crying, said, I can't listen to no more of that. And I don't want to hear no more. That's it. So it was a while. It was a show. It was actually during this first book, me doing an interview that Linda Moulton Howe come on, and she's a pretty good reporter, and she shook my memory on the whole thing. And I started remembering slowly but surely. And as I remembered, I checked it against the tape, and that was just the way that it was. It was 3 hours of it.
And that
But
was the new situation, what you experienced 20 years later at Cat
20
Island,
years,
right?
yeah, 20 years later.
And
And
this is in
it
your
was,
book, right? Is this in the book as well?
it is, it's in the book, Pascagoula, The Closest Encounter, My Story, Calvin
Okay.
Parker. You get them all through Amazon. And then it was so much stuff coming out after I did this book. There was so many eyewitnesses, so many other things that actually eyewitnessed this encounter when it happened. And Philip started taking testimony from them. There's a second book out that is just as big as the first book, about 800 pages. And it says, Pascagoula, the story continues, new witnesses, and I can't even think the name of it really. But anyhow, the story continues.
And is this
And
your book as well, or is this someone else's book?
no, it's mine.
Oh,
But
wow.
we scooped up all the eyewitness accounts, all the evidence we could, all the interviews with the sheriff department and the secret tapes and all that night. We put all that stuff And we was just going to do an addendum on the first book, but the second book being just as big as the first book, we
Wow.
put it all in there. So, it's all there. So there's two books out floating around. Now
Oh, okay.
I prefer the second book to the first. I didn't want to do the first book, but second book, when all these eyewitnesses started coming in, and all these people, after I talked to them and they told me what they had seen and all, and they credible people. We got law enforcement, we got preachers, we got the United States Coast Guard. We got all this in that second book. Everybody that witnessed anything that came forward. And almost on a monthly basis, we have two or three more that comes forward in it.
Wow.
But but I
Wow. Well, people are
prefer
going to
the
have to
second
get these
book.
books. I didn't know there was a second book. I'll have to get the. I ordered the first one. I'm going to have to order the second one too. I didn't realize there was another one. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
definitely going to read both of them, folks, because this is exciting. Now I got to ask you. I mean, this must have been the most terrifying thing that ever happened to you. This first experience. I mean, that had to be terrifying. What's going through your mind while you're laying there with these creatures coming at you? I mean, I guess you must have thought you were going to die or something. I mean, what
Well,
what is what goes through your mind when you're going through something like this?
I figured that was the end. Like you say, you think you're going to die. When you make up your mind that the end is there, then it don't bother you. I had two open heart surgeries in the same way. They came out and they told me, you won't live through the second one. I made up my mind, well, I don't care, now whether I do or not. It's a fact, it's going to be over. And that's the same situation I was in 73. I made up my mind that I was dead and it didn't matter. So I just accepted it. And that's a hard thing to do, too,
I
especially
bet.
when you're 18 years old and got a family you're looking forward to raising.
God,
So
that had to be terrifying.
it
Absolutely
was.
terrifying. So, before you had this experience, did you even believe in such a thing? I mean, did it ever cross your mind? Did you ever wonder, oh, is there other life out there? I mean, is this something you ever even thought about before it happened?
Absolutely not. I didn't never even heard of an alien or a UFO. I didn't know anything about them. I knew the Apollo mission, which, this is the anniversary kind of that. But I knew of that, but I didn't think anything from any other worlds or anything else like that even existed. Never even heard of them. Matter of
Wow.
fact, I never seen pictures of aliens until I did this first book and I did some research looking up some pictures just to see if theirs might have looked like mine, but they didn't. I mean,
Wow.
if I'd been in a bar drinking and this alien come up to me, the way she looked, I would have probably asked her out. That was just how human she looked. That
Right,
was
right. Yeah.
surprising to me.
That's incredible. Well, you certainly had a life-changing experience. I mean, my goodness, that is just it's amazing. I can't thank you enough for sharing this with everybody. And hopefully people are going to start buying this book that haven't heard of it before because this is just an incredible story and it sounds like it just, has a lot more about it that we don't know about and it's just absolutely incredible. So, I want to thank you for coming on the show. This is,
Oh,
just been an
thank
absolute
you
honor
for
to have
having
you.
me.
It's just been an absolute honor. And I'll let you know when it airs. But I'll definitely keep in touch. And one day when we don't have a pandemic going on, hopefully I'm going to make it out to Pascagoula so I can, search my roots out there.
Well,
It's one of those things I've been meaning to do.
you know
And
how to get a hold of me. We'll go out and have some lunch.
that would be
Uh,
a pleasure. That would be a pleasure to meet with you and chat with you some more. It really would. Thank you again. And again, tell everybody how to get your book and what the name of your books are, and that way, people and how people can find you because you have a website and a Facebook, right?
right. And the book, the first book's Pascagoula, Closest Encounter, My Story, Calvin Parker. And it can be got at Amazon. The second book is The Story Continues, New Witnesses, New Evidence. So, both the books can be got through there. I have a Facebook page, which is about to the limit, but it's through Calvin Parker 54.
All right. Well, thank you so very much. You stay safe, and we will talk again. Thank you so very much. This has been a pleasure.
My
And
pleasure.
thank you. Thank you all for coming and listening to the show, and tune in again for another episode of Scariest Paranormal.
The Home Depot's #1 in outdoor power. But when it comes to cordless power, we also pack quite a punch. With the latest mowers, blowers, trimmers, and more. From exclusive brands like Ryobi, DeWalt, Ego, Milwaukee, and Makita. Unleashing the power of gas with all the convenience of cordless. The best names in cordless power. Order online for easy pickup or delivery. Only from the Home Depot. How doers get more done. U.S. only.